What's up YouTube? So Apple has undoubtedly made some enormous splashes in the water with their new lineup of the MacBook Pro series. Particularly, of course, I'm talking about the 14 and 16-inch variants. So the configuration I got here today is the 14-inch variant, and I kind of got what I consider to be their lower mid-range category. So this one here has the M1 Pro chip with the 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU. Additionally, it has 16 gigabytes of unified memory, or RAM if you will, and it has a relatively generous 1 terabyte solid-state drive. And as I mentioned again, this is the 14-inch configuration. Of course, the intention here today is to see what this laptop got right, just how much the new MacBooks have improved over their previous iterations, and to see, of course, if there are still areas where Apple could do a little better to make this even more of an amazing powerhouse. As always, if you guys enjoyed this review, hit that like button, consider subscribing to my channel. I promise I'm always doing my best, and you might just fall in love with me. Let's get started. Starting off with a quick unboxing experience, as you can see, the packaging remains more or less familiar to previous iterations. Of course, you do have updated graphics here with the new MacBook. Apple is flexing that Liquid Retina XDR display hard, as they should, as it is one of the major features. On the backside, you have some basic information about the device, including the configuration we got here. Now, on the side of the box, you of course have this nice pull tab. Once you pull this, the entire plastic wrapping just kind of comes right off. Feels satisfying, I'll be honest. And then we can proceed to open the box, and it just glides open in a typical Apple-like fashion. And the very first thing, of course, you'll see here is the beast itself, the powerhouse, the king, whatever you want to call it, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and a ton of plastic wrapping. Again, actually correction, it's paperback this time. Once you remove all that, here it is in that nice space gray color. But we'll come back to this laptop in just a quick minute. Beyond that, of course, you'll also notice you have the Lightning to MagSafe 3 cable, and this time you'll notice a few quick changes. It's fully braided, and obviously it's separate from the actual adapter piece itself, which is a great thing, meaning that you can just replace the cable should anything go wrong with it. Beyond that, you also have the paperback box. In a second, we'll come to that. And you, of course, have the 96-watt charging adapter. It looks more or less like other MacBook Pro adapters, but again, the key difference here being the fact that you now have MagSafe 3, and it is slightly bigger. Now, if you get other configurations of the MacBook Pro, you get an even larger adapter, but for all intents and purposes, the one you get here, of course, is the 96-watt one. Finally, you do have this paperback envelope, and inside here, you have the instruction manual, quick start guide, warranty information, and 2 Apple stickers. So much generosity. Let's talk about design. So the new MacBook Pro series is definitely a welcome change. It goes from Apple's traditional aesthetics over utility approach and flips it around. So this laptop over here is more linear, it's more meaty, it's more chunky, it's thicker, and all for the better in my honest opinion. So at 3.5 pounds, these are considerably heavier than the likes of the MacBook Pro 13, which weighs approximately 2.9 pounds. With that said though, again, the way it is justified, this is a larger body, you do have an extra inch of screen space as well, but not just that. Overall, there's something about it. It's almost like Apple designed this to kind of dissipate heat as effectively as possible. So starting off with the top side, again, you have that premium metallic finish that you'd expect with most MacBook series laptops, but you also have that shiny Apple logo with the mirror-like surface reflection. And no, unfortunately, it does not light up, but I'm okay with the mirror surface. As you make your way to the rear side of the machine, you can see that nice, long, flat, and linear design continues. So you do have the 2 hinge brackets, and in between the hinge brackets, you have the actual exhaust vent. And as you can see, this kind of emphasizes Apple's priority to making sure this machine stays nice and cool, and thermals in general. As you make your way to the side of the machine, that's where things get really interesting. So on one side, you have Apple's returning MagSafe 3 port, the latest iteration of course, 2 USB Thunderbolt 4 ports, and the good old 3.5mm headphone jack. On the other side, you have a full-sized HDMI port, you have another USB Thunderbolt 4 port, and a full-sized SD card reader. I know some people have said, hey, the SD card reader is okay, but there's new technologies. Keep in mind, this is designed for as many people as possible. The SD card reader, there should be really no reason to complain about having a full-size SD card reader. It's honestly a win-win. At the bottom side, you'll notice, again, you have that nice metallic finish we've come to expect of MacBook Pros. You have 4 rubber feet. This is to give it height and, of course, give it grip as well. But you'll also notice in the dead center, you now have the MacBook Pro branding engraved, which is something that's unique to the new 14 and 16-inch variants. Also, if you look carefully, notice on either side, you have these long linear vents again, and these are, of course, for air intake. If you are coming from a 13-inch MacBook Pro, the first thing you're going to notice as soon as you unfold this laptop is how much of a difference that extra 1 inch of space can make. So the palm rest feels more robust, it feels larger, the overall body feels more expansive. The speaker grills look enormous compared to the 13-inch, and I can't wait to do a sound test, which we'll cover later on in this video. But the trackpad keeps that same consistency in a great way. So you have that amazing premium glass surface finish, plenty of surface space, so you can use your fingers all across the trackpad and feel like you're never gonna run out of space. The clicks are tactile yet subtle at the same time, and of course this is one of the most well-calibrated trackpads in the industry. You will not be disappointed in this regard. As we make our way to the keyboard, there are a few subtle differences. So first and foremost, the keycaps are a little bit larger than the 13-inch variant, and this is of course good because you make less typos. We continue to see the same behavior and feel from this keyboard that we have with Apple's newer MacBooks with the scissor switch mechanism. So you have an ample amount of key travel space. You'll also notice there's a nice tactile but linear feeling to this machine. Overall, when you type on the keyboard, it's a very enjoyable experience. While this is not my favorite keyboard on a laptop, it's definitely amongst my top keyboards that I would recommend to consumers. With that said, you'll notice you do not have a 10 key pad on the 14-inch variant. Also, you'll notice that the classic touch bar is now gone and replaced with the even more so classic traditional function keys. And this is honestly a good thing. I think the reason most people prefer the function keys over the touch bar is because of muscle memory. We know what the keys do. The functions are static, but they're there and we don't have to look for them. The touch bar was too dynamic in nature. Even though it looked cool, it just didn't flow well with, I think, the general thought process of how we use keyboards in the modern day and age. You'll also notice, of course, that the power button doubles as the Touch ID sensor. And yes, this is the only way of biometric scanning for this laptop. We don't get Face ID. You guys know how dead serious I am about hinge quality, and the MacBook Pro 14-inch continues to impress me in the best way possible. The hinges aren't exposed, which means they're reliable. The screen doesn't wobble. It's a super durable mechanism, and yes, of course, you can still open it with a single hand, which can't be said about most laptops in the industry. Now, as we make our way to display fitting, you'll notice you do have somewhat of a fat chin, but still an improvement over previous MacBooks. Where things get really nice are those new ultra sleek looking narrow bezels that are finally in line with 2021 laptops. Other machines have been doing this for years. Apple has finally caught up, so I'm not going to give them kudos. Rather, I'll say thank you for catching up. On the top, you'll notice you have a very thin forehead, and the way Apple's done this, of course, is by creating the notch. Now, people are hating on the notch for no good reason. I've been using it for several days, and I have yet to have a use case where the notch was a nuisance to me personally. Yes, it's there, but it kind of disappears from your mental image in literally a few seconds after using it. And of course, you also get that nice full HD webcam, which is a decent improvement compared to the previous iteration you had with the MacBook Pro 13 and its 720p webcam. Let's talk about the display. So the display has always been amazing on MacBooks, and Apple has just taken it straight to the moon with these new 14-inch and 16-inch iterations. So the one over here has a native resolution by 3024 by 1964, which translates to roughly 254 pixels per inch. Also, this is the first iteration of MacBooks that use micro LED technology, and it's a welcome sight. But perhaps the highlight feature here is that 120Hz ProMotion display. Now, by itself, this is not a big deal. There are already laptops that offer 120Hz and even higher frame rates. But this is probably the first mainstream laptop that has an adaptive refresh rate, meaning that it can go down to lower refresh rates when you don't need that fluidity and smoothness. And this translates to significantly better battery life. A lot of high refresh rate laptops just suffer significantly in terms of their battery life. But let's talk about color accuracy. So of course, needless to say, this laptop has a 100% sRGB rating, but that's not enough. It has a 100% Adobe RGB rating as well. That's right. It would be unjust to say that this laptop looks good in the color department. The colors are godly level good. They're majestic, they're vibrant. If you are a creator, you will wholeheartedly appreciate just the technology, the color accuracy, and the vividness of this display. But perhaps the thing that even paramounts those numbers is the fact that you have a peak brightness of 1650 friggin' nits on this machine. So unless you're about to take a spaceship straight to the sun and work right in front of the sun, no amount of glare is gonna get in the way of your workflow. Now, to be fair, you have a sustained brightness level of 1000 nits, so the peak only goes for a short period of time, but even at 1000 nits, it's considerably higher than most laptops out there. Really, I mean, this is an extraordinary display. Let's talk about performance. Look, I'm gonna be frank with you. If you're getting this machine with the intention to browse the web, watch HD videos, type of Word documents, or even do some light photo editing, there's going to be little to no difference for you, and you're probably wasting your money. This laptop will not feel any faster than previous MacBooks if that's all you plan to do, because those tasks are already super well optimized for most laptops in general. To really take advantage of these machines, you kind of have to do heavy-duty tasks that you wouldn't do in a normal workflow. So for example, I do all my video editing in 4K, and so I imported my workflow to this machine, and I have yet to encounter a single frame drop. So on the media viewer, I had 100% unsuppressed quality, so the video was in real time in its original quality. Despite that, despite having multiple layers of 4K and adding all sorts of effects and filters, there was not a single frame drop. And keep in mind, I have the 16GB variant, so again, it's got the same amount of memory that I have on my current M1 Mac Mini, but I do get the occasional frame drop on that device. But over here, it was way better of an experience. Not just that, rendering times are considerably faster. So I was able to render a 20GB file in approximately 40 seconds, which is super fast. This normally takes 4 to 5 minutes on my existing M1 Mac Mini. Yeah, it's fast for sure. Other activities will also perform better. Now, I don't game on MacBooks. I think PCs are much better for that. But with that said, I have seen on other reviews there are visible improvements. I will do some tests on my own, and I'll make a video on that later on. As far as thermals go, look guys, I'll be honest. So even during my time of doing 4K renders, the average surface temperature of this device did not fluctuate. So it was about 22 degrees Celsius before the render. Even after, it stayed exactly at 22.5 degrees Celsius. So really no real difference. And as far as fan noise goes, I can't provide you an update because the fan has yet to go off on this device. Once it does, I'll give you an actual rating of the peak decibels I hit. But again, I'm kind of trying to make that happen. So this just speaks volumes about how well managed this device is in terms of its thermals. Now, in the battery life department, Apple claims you can get up to 11 hours of web browsing hours. And I found in our real world test at 50% brightness, surfing the web, watching some videos, and even using the speakers at 50% volume for about 30 or so minutes and doing a few other in-between activities, I got just shy of 11 hours. Now keep in mind, given the fact this is a very high-end device with the M1 Pro chip, which would be equivalent of using an i9 for example, this is highly efficient. These are not devices that generally have a reputation of having all-day battery life, but you're getting all-day battery life here with a high-end chip. So honestly, it's a very respectable number to have. The sound quality on this laptop is probably the third most significant improvement, right behind the display and the chipset. So this is a stereo speaker setup with a total of 6 speakers, 3 on each side with force cancelling woofers. Not just that, you have spatial audio with the built-in speakers and Dolby Atmos compatibility. And I have to be honest guys, the sound test I do here just doesn't do justice to how good the speakers on the 14 and 16-inch devices sound. You should go in person to check them out. They're definitely one of the best sounding speakers I've seen on laptops to date. Of course, here's a quick sound test anyway.
So enigmatic and charismatic, gotta live static, gotta get at it, never pragmatic, cause we live tragic. I can't live average, to be alive's magic. Turn it up in the back cause I'm grabbing everything I want, get in my way and I'm stabbing. I'll be moving crowds till I'm 6 feet napping. They need another fix, hooked on like an addict. I got my eyes on the prize and it's changing lives. I wanna live till
So what's the power summary here? Well, starting at $2,000 for the base configuration and $2,500 for the configuration we have over here, the 14-inch MacBook Pro is not a cheap device. And I still think there is a bit of Apple overhead tax on these devices, but for the first time in a long time, I think it can be justified. These feel like genuine pro-level devices. Everything from the look of the device with its robust, linear, mean, gritty look, to the high quality display and of course the high level of horsepower you get from the chipset is fantastic on this device. This is truly designed for people who are looking to push this laptop to its limit, whether it comes in the form of video editing, programming, graphic designing. It's up to you, it's your world, but this laptop is really designed for people like those. If you are again someone who's just getting this laptop for the sake of typing Word documents, seriously save your money and get the 13-inch MacBook Air. I wouldn't recommend the Pro at that point. That's more than enough power for you. But seriously guys, this is a visible improvement, and I think again for the first time in a long time the prices are for the most part justified. And again, if you need even more horsepower, you can always get the M1 Max, which has up to 64 gigabytes of unified memory. So there are plenty of options and configurations. Of course, the cost exponentially increases. So, purchase at your own risk. As always, if you guys enjoyed this review, hit that like button. Consider subscribing to my channel. It genuinely helps me grow. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.